Hi, my name's Rick Halderman, and I'm a computer systems analyst by training, but a complete weather nerd by inclination. The bank I worked for made a real mistake. They offered me training money, and they didn't put any restraint on what I could use it for, so I took some classes at Penn State. I very much enjoy the weather. I'm a weather spotter and use ham radio for that. I also have a website that I run that has weather data at 5-minute intervals since 1995 from my Davis weather station. Why this project? Well, I got interested based on a Weather Brains podcast on mentioning there was really no good definition for outbreaks of tornadoes and what that entailed. And I noticed that most of the time they talk about how widespread the outbreaks are. And I started thinking, well, what about concentration? If you're looking at an outbreak, how concentrated they might be a way to measure. So I started thinking about it a little more. Could I obtain some tornado data and come up with a geographic-based index to rank them based on concentration? Found some data. Fortunately, the Storm Prediction Center makes an all tornadoes text file available. That's all tornadoes from 1950 through 2019. And that's about 60,000 tornadoes were in the file. I loaded them to a MySQL database to manipulate the data and then selected days that had more than 50 tornadoes. The two measures I looked at for this initial run was outbreak density, which is really just the number of tornadoes and then the area of the outbreak, and then intensity to try and get a feel for how intense the tornadoes were. And that's really the sum of the F values or EF values, depending on when the tornado was, divided by the area. Then I took the top 10 events and plotted the date tornado locations and used the MySQL polygon function to come up with the boundaries for the polygons and calculating the area. And here's the top 10, at least according to this index. The spreadsheet here will be shared at the end of the presentation, and it has a link to the information about that event, the date, the number of tornadoes that were that occurred, and then the F or EF value being greater than 2, the number of tornadoes that had that, the total F, and then the average F. The area in square kilometers that was calculated by MySQL, and then the outlook intensity and outlook density, and then the locations, the states those occurred in. I took that data and then plotted it in a GIS program to get an idea of location. It's always better if you can look at, see a visual of the data. So for each of the top 10 events, I do have a GIS map of the event. What I learned a little bit about was outbreaks associated with hurricanes. 2 of the top 10 were associated with hurricane landfall. Rita, number 1 was Rita, and then number 3 was Ivan. Also, cool season outbreaks seem to predominate in the data. And that, I think both those things are really, since I'm using such a geographic-based look at it with a looking at how dense they are, it seems to make some sense there. And also the data seem to be skewed toward more recent events. And I'd like to look into at some point to see if maybe the deployment of the 88D Dopplers by the Weather Service impacted the number of tornadoes being reported on these events, which would tend to make it more recent data. And poking around on the internet to find some information about how to do this stuff. There's 2 resources I came across that are both pretty good, and they're for your reading pleasure. Next steps, I'm thinking about using the length of the tornado track along with the EF value to weight the tornado strengths in the calculations. And then I'm looking, and then look for patterns in the cool seasons events, kind of pick those out and see what might be in common for those. I'd also like to thank the Weather Band for this opportunity. I did do a post earlier this year about what I was doing and got some really good feedback from members of the band. Particularly, I'd like to mention Hunter Haugen. He spent quite a bit of time digging into the data and giving me some excellent feedback and observations. And there's my email. And if you care about my website, that's there too. Thank you. I appreciate it.